Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
So great to see so many people. Really wonderful. You may not know this, but with the uptick in COVID, COVID, yeah. That's really what we should call it. Some grocery stores have gone back to having a special opening in the morning for senior citizens. And a friend of mine told me he was out by a grocery store early in the morning in his particular town. I think that special time started at 7, from 7 to 8. And he told me this incredible story. He was there and he was just kind of watching because he was really surprised that the line got long of seniors waiting to get in. It's about 6:45 in the morning. Incredible, they all got up. Well, that early, just to go to the grocery store. That's all I meant. Come on. Okay, I'm done here. It was incredible they got so early just to go to the grocery store. And he tells me this young man comes and tries to cut in front of the line. And the seniors were very upset, and one woman raised her cane and threatened to hit him, and he left. But then this same young man had this chutzpah. He came back and he tried to cut in front of the line again. And this time one of the men kind of stepped forward, and my friend said he was able to hear what he said. He said, "I know karate and I'm not afraid to use it." The young man backed away again. And wouldn't you know it, a third time the man came back. But this time he didn't try to get through the crowd. All he did was say, "Look, if you don't let me pass, none of you are getting in. I have the key." Although the joke is funny, I was really thinking about it, and I found another level of meaning. The seniors in line could only see a young person, so they shooed him away. However, there were some unseen factors, namely that the man worked at the store, and the man had the key to unlock the door. But the seniors couldn't see these things, so they didn't take them into consideration. Many people in the modern world only believe in things that can be seen and measured. Yet how many unseen forces exist which impact us in profound ways? Think about it for a moment. There's emotions, love, courage, the laws of nature, just to name a few. All of them unseen. Some would say that God is very present in the world, but unseen. So many people do not take God into consideration. In society today, there are some places where people are very comfortable and open, talking about God, religion, and prayer. And there's other places where people are very uncomfortable with this. Recently, there was a controversy at the US Open. I don't know if you heard about it. Coco Gauff, the incredible women's tennis star, just won the US Open, becoming the first teen to win the US Open since Serena Williams accomplished the feat in 1999. And following her victory, she took a moment to kneel by her chair, and she put her hands together. It was pretty obvious she was taking a moment to pray. However, ESPN shared the video on social media with the caption, "Coco Gauff took a moment to soak it all in after winning her first Grand Slam title." Many people were upset with ESPN and they called out the network. One of those people was Tony Dungy, a former NFL coach and currently an NFL analyst. He took to social media and said, "I hate to break this to you, SportsCenter, but Coco Gauff was not soaking it all in at that moment. She was praying." Perhaps the most authoritative voice in the world today seems to discount God as well. Who am I talking about? The iPhone. When I text, I often text the word God, as in thank God or God willing. And like any keyboard, the touchscreen keyboard, the I and the O are right next to each other. Every once in a while, it's capital G-I-D, and autocorrect pops up, and it gives me options below. And usually it's things like Giddy, Gift, Gideon. There's other options that come up too. Never once did the option of God pop up, that might be what I was trying to write. This morning I want to talk about God. and I want to do it in memory of the great Rabbi Harold Kushner of blessed memory, who died on April 28th of this past year at the age of 88. I had the great privilege of hearing Rabbi Kushner speak twice. The second time I was a rabbi, and he gave the keynote address at a rabbinical assembly convention. The first time I heard him speak was at a very important moment in my life. I was a recent college graduate living in my parents' home in St. Louis, and I was considering becoming a rabbi, although I had not decided on it yet. I attended the talk at the St. Louis JCC and was inspired by Rabbi Kushner's wisdom and insight. Then I started reading his books, and they were transformative. Rabbi Kushner could take big ideas in ancient texts and make them meaningful and relevant in contemporary lives, including my own. Even just hearing the titles of his books makes you want to pick them up and read them. Some of the books include When Everything You Ever Wanted in Life Isn't Enough, How Good Do We Have to Be, Who Needs God, and of course, most famously, When Bad Things Happen to Good People. In When Bad Things Happen to Good People, Kushner teaches over and over again that God does not punish us, God is not vengeful, rather God is loving and caring. By articulating this view of God in the beautiful way that Rabbi Kushner does, he has touched the lives of millions of people, many of whom read his book at the most painful moments in their lives. This book has given so many people comfort and strength, and if you haven't read it, it's a must-read. Rabbi Kushner does not make up his theology out of whole cloth. He bases his work on traditional rabbinic sources and biblical sources. Regarding God's relationship to individuals and nations that suffer, the Torah and traditional rabbinic sources present God in two very different ways. One image of God is an angry and punishing God, but the other image of God is the opposite, a loving and forgiving and nurturing God. Rabbi Kushner and his wife Suzette had a son named Aaron who died at the age of 14 from the premature aging disease called progeria. Following the loss of his son, Rabbi Kushner came to an understanding that there was no way that God did this to him. There was no way God was punishing him or his wife or Aaron. Instead, Rabbi Kushner felt God's presence in that horrific time, and God's presence was loving and caring and a source of strength. This traumatic experience led Rabbi Kushner to write When Bad Things Happen to Good People. And in the book, Rabbi Kushner rejects the first image of God, angry and punishing, and instead amplifies that second image of God, of loving and caring. Many people don't realize this at first, that the book is not called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People, but rather When Bad Things Happen to Good People. The reason Rabbi Kushner did not write a book about why bad things happen is because he didn't believe there was that much to say about them. One affirmative statement that Rabbi Kushner says about the why is that God did not do this. Another reason Rabbi Kushner called his book When Bad Things Happen to Good People is because after we've suffered a tragedy and grieved, we have a big decision to make. What will we do with the pain? How will we respond to the world? According to Rabbi Kushner, God does not send us the bad things. Rather, God is accessible to us and can provide us with strength and determination to live with our pain and to help us respond to our pain in ways that bring goodness to the world. Instead of asking what is God, Rabbi Kushner says, I would rather have us believe and say that the effort to understand what God can mean in our lives is an ongoing and never-ending one. It should teach us to approach the idea of God in a spirit of humility. For some people, sensing God's presence and connecting to God comes easily, and for others it's difficult or may feel impossible. Many times I've seen two siblings in religious school or at summer camp. Sometimes it's more than two siblings. One of them loves being in the prayer service, and you can see they feel this great connection. while the other seems to feel totally disconnected. Our relationship to God is very personal and subjective. There's a beautiful Hasidic teaching which begins with the question, in the Amidah, why does it open as we're blessing God with the words, blessed are you God, the God of our ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, right? And now we say, the God of Sarah, the God of Rebekah, the God of Rachel, the God of Leah. It could have just as easily said, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. Why does it repeat the word God over and over and over again? And the answer is that each of our patriarchs and matriarchs needed to find their own personal connection to God. While they might have learned something from a parent or grandparent, they couldn't just adopt whatever their ancestors said. They needed to find it on their own. So too, that's a truth for us as well. We have to strive to find ways through which we can connect with God. And we can gain insight from others in their connection with God by talking to them, watching them pray, and watching how they live their lives. But in the end, it must come from us, and it must be authentic. For those whom sensing God, feeling God's presence is not easy, I have 5 suggestions. Some of them are based on Rabbi Kushner's writings. First, we should understand and remove the obstacles. Some obstacles include statements, messages, and images about God that turn us off. Rabbi Kushner gives credit to a Christian colleague of his, but he said he started to do this. If someone came to him and said, Rabbi, I don't believe in God, one of his responses to them would be to say, tell me about this God you don't believe in. There are a lot of gods I don't believe in either. Maybe we'll discover that we both reject the same notion of God, and then maybe we can find an understanding of God that we can both support. Rabbi Kushner says that many decades ago, when the death of God theology was a fad, he remembers seeing a bumper sticker that said, my God is not dead, sorry about yours. This isn't when bad things happen to good people. He said, I guess my bumper sticker would say, my God is not cruel, sorry about yours. Another obstacle is that God has no form. It's what I touched on in the beginning. God is invisible. Addressing this challenge, Rabbi Kushner says, no scientist has ever seen an electron, and no physicist has ever seen a quark. But all physicists believe that quarks are real. Why? Because when they look into their microscopes, they see things happening that could only happen if quarks and electrons existed. I believe in the reality of God the way scientists believe in electrons. I see things happening that would not happen unless there is a God. Number 2, another way to sense God's presence is to go inward. Each of us has a soul, which some of our sages believe is a little piece of God within us. Rabbi Naomi Levy writes, the rabbis tell us the soul is a mirror of God within us. The soul fills the body just as God fills the world. The soul outlasts the body just as God outlasts the world. The soul is one in the body just as God is one in the world. The soul sees but is not seen just as God sees but is not seen. How does one connect with this aspect of God? By trying to hear your inner voice through reflection and meditation. Jewish prayer is many things. It's about connecting with other people in the community, saying prayers of gratitude, expressing our deepest hopes, crying out to God in pain, and asking for things that we need. However, the Hebrew word for prayer, lihitpalel, literally means to reflect. Jewish prayer is also supposed to contain moments of self-reflection. A third suggestion, reflect on all the good things in your life. Reflect on the blessings of nature. Reflect on the miracle of existence. There's a prayer very early on in the Siddur which says, Va'ani barov chastecha avo beitecha, which means, because of your great loving kindness, God, I come into your home, I enter your home which could mean the synagogue, but the home could also mean the world. I enter the world with an understanding of your great loving kindness. Can you sense goodness and loving kindness in the world? Where does it come from? Number 4, study Torah. The morals, values, and stories of our holy books point to a divine wisdom. I also recommend, in addition to rabbinic texts and other modern texts, that you read from the 5 books of Moses, from the Torah. You could read the weekly Torah portion, or you could do it another way. And whatever you do, I don't have it here, you should use the Eitz Chaim Chumash. It's the Chumash we use here at the temple, the big red Eitz Chaim Chumash. Why? Because Rabbi Kushner was asked to write one of the commentaries. And that commentary is really the best commentary I've ever read on the Torah. Literally on every single page, he makes the words of the Torah accessible and meaningful. It is certainly one of his great, great legacies, and it's a great gift. Number 5, Rabbi Kushner says that he finds God in human strength and moral behavior. He writes, I find God in the willingness of so many people to do the right thing, even when it's difficult, expensive, or unappreciated, and that people reject the wrong thing, no matter how tempting or profitable. Where does an ordinary person find that willpower unless God is present, motivating that person to surpass himself? I find God not in the tests that life imposes on us, but in the ability of ordinary people to rise to the challenge, to find within themselves qualities of soul, qualities of courage they did not know they had until the day they needed them. And Rabbi Kushner has many proof texts and sources that support this view. One of the most powerful and one of his favorite verses in all of the Bible is Exodus chapter 3, verse 14. This is during the encounter between God and Moses at the burning bush. Moses, of course, doesn't want to accept the mission that God is giving him for a variety of reasons. And the rabbis give many, partly maybe because he's humble, partly because it's terrifying to go back to Pharaoh who wants to kill him and to demand that he let the Israelites go. But then he finally accepts. But then he says to God, and when I go there and I tell the Israelites that God is going to redeem you, and they ask me, what is God's name? What shall I say to them? And God answers Moses and says, Eheyeh asher eheyeh. Say to the Israelites, Eheyeh sent me. What does Eheyeh asher eheyeh mean? It's a very mysterious phrase. It's nearly impossible to translate. Some say it means I am who I am, or I will be what I will be. Rabbi Kushner, however, directs us to the commentary of the great sage Rashi. And Rashi connects it with a verse from 2 verses before in the story. There, as Moses is expressing his fear about confronting Pharaoh, God says to Moses, Eheyeh imach, I will be with you when you go confront Pharaoh. And so Rashi says, Eheyeh asher eheyeh, it means, Eheyeh imach b'tzara zo, asher eheyeh imach b'tzarot bizmanim atid lavo. I will be with you and with the children of Israel in your suffering now, when you were enslaved to the Egyptians, and I will also be with you in your sufferings in the future. Ultimately, this name of God, which in many ways has resonance to the Yud He Vav He name, the most important name in which we say Adonai. Adonai means a God who is with us in difficult times. During the high holidays and in the New Year 5784, may we sense God's presence and God's love. When we face difficult times, God forbid, may we feel God saying to us, Eheyeh imach, I am with you in your suffering. And may God give us the strength and courage to do the right thing and bring more light into this world. May the memory of Rabbi Harold Kushner always be for a beautiful blessing. And let us say, Amen.